You understand consequences and repercussions very well.
When Alvarez went on to mourn the deaths of her parents and sister, a query whispered in her mind, where do they go? It became the title of Alvarez's 2016 children's book addressing the emotional effects of such passings. It struck me that the older you get, the less answers you have, Alvarez explained. People think writers write things because they know things. I write to understand and make meaning of what I'm up against in my own life. I want to figure things out. Writing is how I find my way. In a recent Literary Hub roundtable on writing a women of a certain age, the author noted how life was full of bardo, in liminal, in between states, neither caterpillar nor butterfly, with the jury still out on who or what will emerge or not emerge at all. Bardo states are ripe for fictional picking, she continued. That said, I confess they're not much fun to live through. All that confusion, commotion, the abyss opening at my feet. So, it actually can be fertile writing time, as I'll do anything to get myself out of there. And so, with the arrival of COVID-19 in 2020, Alvarez began her latest book. More and more I felt this ageism in a lot of literature, where the elders were signing their wills and dying on the first page, and then the story really gets started with the young people, she told VT Digger. As I grow older, I'm interested in truly complex and vital older women protagonists. As our baby boomer generation ages, I think more of us are looking for narratives to help us make meaning of this time in our lives. In The Cemetery of Untold Stories, the character of Alma, like Alvarez, is a writer facing her later years with voluminous files of unfinished work. The problem was the writerly impulse was still inside her. And if she didn't bring it out, would it destroy her as it had her friend? It wasn't like she had a choice. But one thing she could choose, after spending decades giving characters' lives a shapely form, Alma wanted to close the story of her own writing life in a satisfying way. Alvarez's new novel spills with questions. Whose stories are told and whose aren't? What's fact and what's a figment of a writer's imagination? When you tell a true story, it already contains the elements of fiction, the author said. You've got a point of view, i.e. your own. You're highlighting some characters and ignoring others. And each time you tell it, it gets revised. Alvarez, for example, asked her sisters to recount the day they fled their former homeland. One told the story of how a car came up and we all crawled inside and we had to push it down the driveway so the secret police wouldn't hear it, the author said. The rest of the family laughed. They knew that was a scene from The Sound of Music. We saw it soon after our emigration, the author said. That movie captured something about how my sister felt about the terror, so it became what happened to us. In Alvarez's latest novel, the lead character buries her unfinished work in a cemetery in hopes of laying it to rest. The author didn't have to think hard to create those discarded stories. I lifted pieces from my manuscripts that never made it to fruition, she said. But just as those seemingly forgotten pages have found new life in the book, the thoughts and feelings they embody rise at the end in unexpected ways. There's a saying often quoted by protesters, they tried to bury us, they did not know we were seeds, Alvarez said. Stories never die. They wait in silence to be told. Calling the result a finely crafted novel, Kirkus Reviews notes her gifts for glowing prose and powerful narrative are still strong. With compromised vision, Alvarez will limit her coming book tour, although she's set to appear in Manchester, Middlebury and Montpelier to support local independent bookstores in her home state, where the one-time child of the Caribbean has warmed to the cooler climate. People say the two places are diametrically opposite, but the cultures and value systems of both remind me of each other, she told this reporter in a 2012 interview. Vermont is a small-town state where helping your neighbor is still so important. People think I should be in Miami or the Southwest, but I can't think of a more Dominican state than Vermont. Alvarez went on to note how the Vermont Institute of Natural Science offered thanks when she and her husband, retired ophthalmologist Bill Eichner, planted their former 60-acre Dominican coffee farm with shade trees. The Bicknells thrush that summers in the Green Mountains, winters in those trees, she said. Even the little bird knows we are connected. Yet as spring returns, Alvarez's flights of fancy now require prism glasses and a slower pace. "It's changed my life," she said of her sight issues. "But as one doctor told me, Julia, the eye is not going to get better, but you will." The writer has found similar inspiration in lines from Wendell Berry's poem Manifesto, The Mad Farmer Liberation Front. "Be joyful though you have considered all the facts." She especially appreciates the poem's conclusion, "Practice resurrection." "Those of us who live in a four-season state like Vermont know about that," she said. "After the blast of winter, these light-filled days come about and the robins are back and there's little tiny snowdrops on the lawn. As you get older, little deaths happen all the time, if you're lucky to live long enough and survive them." That's why, when you ask Alvarez if she'll keep writing, her answer is emphatic. "Am I breathing?" she'll practically shout. "I might have to change how I do it, but this is not my last book, or so I hope. I'm not yet ready to join my characters in the cemetery of untold stories." Subscribe to our channel Mojos KE for more unfinished work in a cemetery in hopes of laying it to rest.